Your players have been recruited to one of the British government's most secret divisions. In fact, it's a division so secret, simply knowing about it will require you to sign the extra part of the Official Secrets Act in blood. This government division doesn't even have a name. It's referred to by its original location, offices situated above a laundry, thus giving it the name Capital Laundry Services, or simply the Laundry. Your players are operatives for the Laundry, tasked with investigating occult activity, stopping cultists from summoning mind melting horrors, and preventing world ending gods from other realities from feasting on humanity. That is the premise of the Laundry Role Playing Game Second Edition from Cubicle 7 Games, and I'll be sharing my review of the Operative's Handbook right after this. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Today, I am going to share my review of the Laundry Role-Playing Game Second Edition Operative's Handbook from Cubicle 7 Games. This 188-page hardcover with PDF is on its way into stores, carries an MSRP of $49.99. You can guarantee you'll get that free PDF if you order from Cubicle 7 Games. If you want to grab the PDF, you can do so right now over at DriveThruRPG for $32.99. Having said all that, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got the Operative's Handbook for the Laundry Second Edition. A few things to mention before we get stuck in. First of all, my friends over at Cubicle 7 Games were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. It's important you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the book. I do want to give you a good feel for what you're going to find inside. And then lastly, this is a player-facing book, so if you're a player, you have no worries, there are no spoilers ahead. You can kick back, relax, and enjoy this video. Now, of course, if your game master has been kicking around picking up the Laundry Second Edition, let them know about this review. That way they can approach the Operative's Handbook and make a far more informed buying decision. First thing we're going to do is take a peek at the credits page. A lot of folks worked very hard to bring this to life. So let's give credit where credit is due. If you're not overly familiar with The Laundry, it is a series of novels, novellas, and short stories from Charles Stross, and it features this secret British division of the government, which tasks its operatives with stopping incursions into our reality by supernatural beings and preventing supernatural events from taking place. And of course, the division is called The Laundry. Interestingly enough, the series has just wrapped up this year. In fact, the last book in the series came out in January. I've listened to the first 4 audiobooks of The Laundry, and I really dig it. I like it. It's a cool series. So this is the second edition of the role-playing game. Years back, Cubicle 7 Games released the first edition. If I remember correctly, it was built upon basic role-playing. So it was a percentile system. And it was pretty interesting, although I do want to point out that I think it went overboard with the humor because The Laundry is satirical. It is humorous. It's not over the top hilarity or anything like that. The supernatural elements are normally played straight up. And one of the things that I didn't care for in the first edition was I didn't think the writers actually pulled off the humor, which, let's be honest, that is not easy to do in a role-playing game. In fact, if you have some experience in this hobby, at some point in time, you've probably tried to at least play in a game that was fairly humorous in style. Maybe you were looking to game master that game. It's not easy because most of the laughter that comes from around the game table is based on the player's actions and their failures and the crazy schemes they try to come up with, not necessarily from humorous situations that are put in front of them. I will say the second edition does it right. Sure, there's some snarkiness, there's a little smart acidness to the presentation here, but for the most part, this is played straight up, or maybe with a little bit of tongue in cheek, but it doesn't go overboard with trying to be funny. I definitely like that. So we're going to start off with our character creation. This is a dice pool system. I'll get into action resolution in just a bit, but we've got three attributes, three core attributes. It is body, mind, and spirit. They're going to range anywhere from 1 to 4. And we also have skills. Those skills will have levels as well. So normally your dice pool is going to consist of an attribute plus skill. That is going to be the total number of dice you'll be rolling. So to start off with, the player is going to choose their assignment. And what the assignment essentially is going to be their role in the laundry. What is their role within the team that's going to go out on missions? And it's important for the players to keep in mind, regardless of what assignment they choose, that's not going to be the only thing that they're going to be doing on missions. The reality is the laundry is understaffed. It's underfunded. So it isn't unusual for them to dispatch a hammer when the tool they really need is a spanner. So I like that aspect of the characters here, that it's not just going to be what their assignment is. So if they're a cleaner or a zombie wrangler or an accountant, there's more to be done in missions other than just what their specialty is. But what you will find with the assignments, it's going to give you the breakdown of the starting attributes, as well as the most important skill involved with that assignment. You'll have other skills that can be purchased with experience points. And then you're going to have the core talent, because we also have talents in the Laundry second edition. And then you'll have an opportunity to pick a couple more talents. And then it'll wrap up with some equipment that a character from that assignment would normally utilize out in the field. Then we're going to get into our skills. They're fairly broad. There are 24 skills here, ranging from close combat and athletics to medicine and so forth. So like I said, fairly broad as far as the skills go. Then we get into talents, and there are a lot of talents here. Some of these talents also have multiple levels that can be purchased. Some will have prerequisites. So if you don't have the prerequisite, you cannot choose that talent or purchase that talent later on down the line. Now, player characters are going to earn experience points, and those experience points will be utilized to increase attributes, increase skill levels, buy new skills, increase talent levels, and purchase new talents. So as you can see, quite a lot of talents here. There is also a questionnaire at the end of the book. It's 10 questions, and it's to help the player kind of flesh out their character. There are random tables with that as well. So if they don't want to just use the question as a prompt for them to come up with an answer, they can roll 2 6-sided dice. Also want to point out, this is a dice pool system. It only uses 6-sided dice. So we're going to get into operations. This is going to tell us how do we play the Laundry second edition. And I will mention, I'm kind of surprised at the complexity of the rule system here. Now, I don't want to say that this is a complex game. It is not. But I was expecting this to be pretty rules light because you figure it's the Laundry. It is based on a series of books and stories, novellas, and so forth. So you might have fans of the series who are looking at the role-playing game and maybe have never played a role-playing game before. But I had to say, there's more crunch in the Laundry, in my opinion at least, than in the new Warhammer Old World. So, and I would have thought that would have been the other way around, but that is not the case. So anytime there is something going on where the success is not clear, it's not guaranteed, then you're going to roll a test. And depending on the difficulty of the test, that is going to determine the difficulty number that needs to be rolled equal to or higher. Now that's different for dice pool systems. Normally in dice pool systems, you're going to know right off the bat what are the numbers you need to roll, and you're simply looking to try to add more dice to have more opportunities for success. Some role-playing games that utilize a dice pool system, you could roll 6 dice. All you need is 1 success. Others, the number of successes is going to improve what you've done, what you've succeeded at doing, like levels of success. That is also utilized here, but the actual difficulty number will change. So if it's something that's relatively simple, it might have a difficulty number of 2. So 2 or higher has to be rolled on your 6-sided dice. If it's something that's very, very difficult, it might end up being a 6. So there is that. Something else to keep in mind, you might require multiple successes in order to pull out what you're trying to do. So for the most part, the game master, or in this case, they're called the supervisor, might tell someone, okay, this is something that takes place very quickly. All you got to do is roll your, let's say as an example, it's a medic who's trying to stabilize somebody who's in cardiac arrest, just as an example. So it's something that's not going to be taking a whole lot of time. It's something that they're going to attempt to complete relatively quickly, not seconds, but just a few moments. So the supervisor might tell them, okay, so you're going to roll mind and medicine. And the difficulty here is going to be a 4, but you only need to roll 1 success. So then the player is going to take their dice pool. They're going to roll their 6-sided dice, and they're looking to roll 4 or higher. If it's something that's going to take a longer amount of time or something that really requires a lot of focus, then you might have multiple successes that are required. You might have to have a group success of a certain number of successes from the group where the players who are taking part in the action all have to roll, and then you're going to total up all of the successes. So there are quite a few different things going on there as well. As far as the skills go, there is also something called focus, and players can use focus with their skills. And what that allows them to do, it allows them to increase the number on a die by 1 for every point of focus. So let's say a character has, let's use the same example again, right? We've got the medicine skill and they've got a focus of 2 in it. So what that means is they could add 1 to 2 different dice once they roll, or they could add 2 to a single die once they roll. So we've got that. We've also got some meta currencies like luck and threat. Luck is used by the players. Threat is used by the game master. So like I said, there are some complexities here that I really wasn't expecting, but I don't have any issue with whatsoever. Combat is abstract in certain ways and then relatively crunchy in other ways. So as far as our range and areas, they're pretty abstract here. But as far as combat goes, we have some derived attributes for the player characters. And they are like melee, ranged combat, toughness, defense. And in combat, you would be actually comparing your, let's say, melee skill to someone else's defense skill, or your range skill against someone's defense skill. And it's not a number, it's actually an adjective. So let me see. I may have passed it by. I think I did. Okay. So we have what's known as the ladder. And I am going to point right out here. This here is wrong. It's got to be wrong because it doesn't make any sense. But what's supposed to go on is you're supposed to take the difference, right? So let's say it's range combat and you're good in range combat and you've got a dice pool of 4, just for an example. Well, so you've got good, and let's say your target's defense is poor. So that's a difference of 2. So you got average, then good. So you would look here and it says, if your, accuracy is equal to the target's defense, if it's 2 or more steps higher, your difficulty number is a 2, or it could be a 3, a 4, a 5, or a 6. But the thing is, the steps here is incorrect, I think, because for an example, it says if it's 1 step higher than the target's defense, and as an example, it's good accuracy versus poor defense. Well, good, then average, then poor. Is that a misprint? And then I will tell you right here, it says good melee versus exceptional defense. Well, we don't have exceptional. It's extraordinary. So like I said, I think this is incorrect. The examples are incorrect. I think this is correct. The examples, I believe, are wrong. So essentially with combat, what you're looking at is for every success, you're causing a wound. Now, toughness soaks up wounds. Armor soaks up wounds. Once the toughness is gone and you're taking wounds, then you start marking off wounds as far as your character. Most player characters will have 4 wounds. Although we do have these derived attributes like defense and accuracy and melee, toughness, and so forth. So once you start losing wounds, then you would take injuries. So once you're out of wounds, then you take injuries, and we have minor injuries, critical injuries, and so forth. We've got death tests. So if you take an injury and you're out of wounds, then you have to roll to make sure that you haven't died. Like I said, there's some crunch here going on, although it's not difficult to wrap your head around. Then we're going to get into gear. So we've got different weapons, different equipment. A lot of these things will actually have an ability, like a special ability attached to it. Then we get into our magic. And magic is very dangerous. In fact, most player characters are not going to touch magic at all. And it is very, very easy for magic users to get this like brain syndrome, which deteriorates every time they miscast to the point where they're just a vegetable. And that can happen pretty damn easily. As far as the magic itself, we do have some established spells, but most of the magic is sort of seat of the pants, kind of created on the fly, which is fine. Actually, Warhammer, the old world magic is sort of like that as well. So I do like that. I think that's pretty cool. But we do have different kinds of magic, almost like different schools of magic here too. And then we're going to wrap up with a section talking about what is life like when you're an operative in the laundry. And I definitely dug this quite a lot. I thought that was really, really nicely done. Here's that questionnaire I was talking about. Then, of course, we will have a character sheet and a conditions summary. And that is a peek inside the Laundry Second Edition Operatives Handbook from Cubicle 7 Games. Let's swing on over to the other camera so I can share some final thoughts as well as my review score. So as I've already pointed out a few times, I'm kind of surprised by the complexity of the laundry. I don't have a problem with it. I just am surprised because I would have thought because you're looking to bring people in who are fans of the laundry, maybe haven't played role-playing games before, maybe you'd go in a rules light direction. Like I said, this isn't overly complex at all, but there is some surprising crunch to the proceedings. So keep that in mind. Let's talk a little bit about the production quality. Paper stock, excellent. It's got a stitched binding, so we know that's going to hold up. Artwork is unusual, I guess I would say. I haven't seen this sort of artwork in Cubicle 7 Games releases before. I have heard some folks online talking about how they don't really care for the artwork. I thought it was fine. It's just different. It's just not the usual kind of artwork we see in, say, like a Warhammer role-playing game, like Soulbound or Wifrip and things like that. Not a problem. It's cool with me. But yeah, the style is a little bit different. I will say that. But all in all, cool artwork throughout. Now, as far as the Operatives Handbook itself, I think it's very nicely put together. Are some typos throughout. There is that table there for the ladder that I think is wrong. I'm not positive, but it just doesn't jive. The examples don't jive with the rest of the chart there. I could be absolutely wrong. I don't know, but just it just doesn't seem right. So I want to point that out. Of course, this isn't going to be everyone's cup of tea. It is a horror role-playing game. The deck is stacked against the operatives for the most part. There is all the red tape and bureaucracy of the laundry itself that player characters are going to have to deal with too. So those of you who are kind of curious, how does this stack up to, say, Call of Cthulhu? Obviously, this is a modern setting, and it does deal with the bureaucracy of working in a government agency, as well as having to tackle supernatural threats. I think it's very cool. I like it. I would probably have a lot of fun playing it, and I'd probably have a good time running it too. Like I said, not going to be everyone's cup of tea. And of course, it does take place in the UK. So there is that. If you're not overly familiar with the British Isles, you might have a little more difficult time with running the Laundry Second Edition or playing the Laundry Second Edition. But all in all, I think you'll have fun. So on a scale of 0 to 10, I give the Laundry Second Edition Operatives Handbook from Cubicle 7 Games an 8.5 out of 10. That is it for this time out. If you enjoyed the Gaming Gang and would like to support the outlet, you can do so in a few ways. First, by utilizing our affiliate links to the One Bookshelf sites, such as DriveThruRPG. To do so, simply visit thegaminggang.com, click on one of our banners. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get 5% of that sale as a commission on most sales. And all those commissions really do add up, help keep thegaminggang.com around. You can also make a one-time donation by way of PayPal and become a monthly member of our Patreon. You'll find links in the show notes. Also, down in those show notes, you're going to find an invite link to our Discord server. It's absolutely free to sign up, so be sure to hang with the gang over on Discord. If you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell. And if you ring the bell, select all notifications. because that way, not only will you know when I share videos such as this review, you'll also be informed when my live stream, The Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central, as I bring you the latest in tabletop role-playing game news and more. Of course, when you're not watching videos here on the channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are never going to see here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Until I see you next time, I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.